Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is Greenleaf Season 2, Episode 12, and the name of this episode is House Rules. This was a really good episode, and so much is starting to take shape. Let me get started. The episode opens up, Daisy Skanks is doing a sermon at Triumph. And in this, pretty much, to nip it in the bud, he pretty much, has this discussion about, homophobia. And he pretty much talks about, he starts talking about marriage. He talks about shellfish. And yet, he's saying that, even though shellfish was considered a sin, but yet, y'all quick to go to the river to get y'all crawfish and to get them shrimp. You do what you got to do. And we see that Darius is in the audience taking notes on everything that Bishop Skanks is saying. So he pretty much starts talking about, that we need to embrace gays and that God is love, but God loves gays. And within that message, he kind of flips it on cavalry, where cavalry, they'll hire you, but yet don't be on social media about your sexuality. Completely referring to Carlton. So it's just like we saw his whole thing with Gigi. That was all, that was pretty much, he did. We actually see that Skanks did take a stand, but he threw Cavalry under the bus at the same time because he has it out for Cavalry, and we know this. So definitely we see that Darius is the one who actually wrote the story, and the next time in the next scene we see that it's Bishop, Lady Mae, Charity, and Grace. They're talking about the article, and we also Lady Mae notices that Grace has been having trouble sleeping, and I think it's because she's still being haunted, by Uncle Mac in her mind. And then they said that it's kind of funny that Cavalry was mentioned, but Darius didn't once come and interview me or anything, but Cavalry is mentioned, and it's kind of spun on a negative light, and he kind of questions, did they talk to Carlton, at all? Like, do you know if because I think it was Bishop who asked Grace, like, do you know if Darius interviewed Carlton? She said she has no idea, and then, like, he was saying, and then he kind of went on Grace, like, here you go, Grace. Here you were, all rooting for Skanks, and look what he's done. Obviously what inspires me doesn't inspire you. Just throwing shade. And Grace is like, look, I had no idea he was going to do this, but at the end of the day, he's right. We need to take a stand against this in the church because a lot of people are being damaged because of this. Where these people, want to be a part of the church and want to be a part of the community, but they're being rejected because of their sexual preference. He's like, it's inhuman and it's not of God. So they pretty much had that discussion. So we pretty much see that's what goes on in that scene. Then we get a scene with Jacob and Carissa. The wiring at that house is horrible, and the lights keep going out. And, and she pretty much says that, look, this whole house needs to be rewired. And Jacob's like, well, we can't afford that, And she's saying that, we can't afford to get this house rewired, but you can afford to keep that hypocrite secrets, talking about Daisy Skanks and his whole gambling thing. And she's like, and she pretty much starts saying that, look, you need to maybe go in that little GoFundMe account you got set up, and maybe we can use that. And he's like, no, I'm not going to be doing what Skanks is doing, what other people are doing. That money is for the community, and that's what I'm going to use the money for. But then she starts being adamant, like, bruh, get a job. My money covers the bills, but I definitely don't make enough money to get this house rewired. We need to rewire this house because we have children in here, and every time we turn around, the lights go out. You plug in one thing, the whole house goes out. It's like, get a job. You know, and she was just adamant about him getting a job throughout the whole episode. And it's like, we're starting to see that Carissa has gotten comfortable being that bossy mentality that she's been since season 1. And even though the situation's different, she still is kind of talking at Jacob instead of talking to Jacob. Then we actually see that Grace has all of these files at the church, and she's with Viola. We remember Viola from season 1. She's the grandmother of one of the victims of Uncle Mac. Her name was Daniel Turner, and pretty much she's getting all these files. So we come to find out that Grace is taking over as outreach director. That was the position that Kevin had, and so pretty much we see that going on, and she's pretty much going through all this stuff, and she's trying to say that maybe this is where I'm gonna fit in, and then Viola. Viola. Viola really made a good point. No, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Her name wasn't Viola. It was Darlene. Miss Darlene. Forgive me, y'all. Well, Miss Darlene pretty much says that, well, when are you going to start preaching again? And she's like, well, I don't know. Maybe I think right now being an outreach director for Calvary is where my calling is. And she says, and besides, I'm not really popular right now in the church, and people really don't want to hear what I have to say. But then Darlene checked her. She says that, look, a lot of people just don't fit in. And you are just that kind of person. You never fit in, but you have a place. And she says, if you really think about it, there's probably prophets in the Bible that never was awarded Employee of the Month. So I was like, that was sweet. That was real sweet. And it really did tug at Grace. So then we get a scene with Basie Skanks is in his office, and he's talking to like this really big dude or whatever, and Skanks is giving his whole spiel like, I got the money coming, the money's coming, I got you covered, I got your back, and then all of a sudden Bishop Greenleaf walks in, and he's like, oh, okay, well, we have a meeting, it was good talking to you, I gotta actually attend this business here. And the guy was like, but you make sure you attend our business as well. And then we see this dude walk out, and he mean mugging, and Bishop's looking at him like, yo, what kind of planet did you come off of? So he already seeing something ain't right about this. And immediately Bishop Greenleaf goes after Basie Skanks. He's like, you know what? Stay away from my family. Keep my church and my name out your mouth. You could have did your sermon, but you keep trying to come for my family, and I'm so not here for you. So you better fall back. And then Gank's like, look, man, you can't tell somebody, what to say out. You can't get mad that God put this on my heart. And he's like, God ain't got nothing to do with this. You tried to crap with me with Triumph 2, and you tried to use my son against me. And then now you're trying to use my daughter to try to go against me with this whole, preaching, anti-homophobic business. He's like, look, that's my daughter, and I won't part with her easily. And he's like, yeah, won't you? And then basically he's like, yeah, won't you ask her about that? And he's like, you know what? You're failing, Basie, and you are reaching, and it's pathetic. Now, remember back when you told me the judgment is coming? It is. It's coming for you. I was like, oh. Yeah, do you remember Basie bossed up in his office and told him, get ready, the judgment's coming. I mean, sounded all creepy and all boss-like. Basie's, and like, it's great that the Bishop Greenleaf went back and delivered that same line to him. And let him know judgment's coming for you, bruh. Because you got a whole bunch of stuff going on, and you trying to play like you all holier than now, but yet we know that Basie Skanks is a hot mess, a complete hot mess. Then we actually see that afterwards, Bishop is, feeling himself. He kind of got his mojo back. So he has a conversation with Lady Mae. They talk about Skanks. And then they talk about Clarissa and Jacob. And she said that, don't you remember at the dinner table when we was talking about Basie Skanks, and then Clarissa says, well, you don't know the half of it, and Jacob shut her down? I wonder why he shut her down. What is it that they know about Skanks that they're not talking about? You know what? I got an idea. Let's go over there for dinner. They want us. I mean, and all of a sudden, Lady Mae, all of a sudden that little fancy schmancy just kind of like, oh, over there in those quarters. And he's like, look, this is the best we can do. I mean, after all, Jacob wants us to respect him as a man, so I, as a man, will go to his place to actually sit down and talk to him. So she's like, okay, fine, because he says, yeah, because there's more to the story. Then all of a sudden, the secretary came in and said that Rochelle Cross is on the phone, and she's like, oh, okay. So he's like, okay, and also he was like, and Lady Mae was like, go ahead and take the call, Bishop, But then he asked her, what's up with this whole Jacinta Butler business? What's going on with her? And she's like, oh, I just think she'll play a great role, with the Women's Day conference. And for the fact that she got the girls in the cotillion, I mean, it's the least that I could do to actually thank her for looking out for my granddaughters. So he's like, okay. So then all of a sudden she leaves. Bishop gets on the phone, and he's like, Miss Cross, how are you? You was just on my mind. He's like, oh, no. Call me James. I was like, oh, what? Like, he's soft on her, and it's so obvious that he is. I mean, he's definitely liking the attention he's getting from her because she's throwing it out there. Then we actually see that Grace is going through all of the files that is in her office, and she actually comes up to this pamphlet, God and Homosexuality, where she comes to realize this is some of the stuff that Kevin was dealing with, and that Kevin was a part of this group. So she takes this to Bishop Greenleaf, and they have like a really good scene. Shout out to Merle Dandridge and Keith David. That was a phenomenal scene, because they were really arguing this question of homosexuality, and they said that, look, this is what Kevin was going through. I found this pamphlet. He was going to these groups where they was talking about being anti-gay. I mean, where they were drinking this syrup to make them throw up every time they had desires. I mean, this is like self-flagellation. This is crazy. And he was like, if anything, homosexual, and then Bishop Green was like, well, look, to be honest with you, homosexuals are going through the same fight that we have gone through, and it's like you're not accepted just because you come from a certain creed, or because you come from a certain creed, or because you have a different orientation than everyone else, you're deemed not good enough. So pretty much, pretty much Grace is adamant. We need to face this, and we need to own up to this, that we can no longer tolerate this, that homophobia is no longer acceptable in the church. And, Bishop Skanks is like, yeah, I'm with you, I understand where you're coming from, but I'm not ready to go down that road. And she's like, why not? Are you afraid about your reputation? Are you afraid about, or what's going to happen to Calvary? What's going to happen to all these young men and young women who are battling this issue, and yet, they don't have anyone to turn to because the church has kind of preached this whole ideal that, homosexuality is wrong, and because of it, they don't have nowhere to turn to, so they turn to, suicide and all of these, acts, or feeling broken and rejected because the God that they want to love, they now feel that God doesn't love them, and that's wrong. We're making people think that God doesn't love them. God loves all of us. And he's like, don't you think I know that? And she's like, well, I don't understand. Why are you not fighting for justice? Why are you not making this happen? And Bishop Greenleaf was like, look, it's about patience. We need to have patience in this, And she's like, patience? Don't you think we've waited long enough? Don't you think we're tired? Don't you think that she's like, yes, I understand we need to have patience, but patience doesn't mean you sit back and don't do nothing. Patience means you keep working and working until something pays off, but you still keep doing something, it's like we need to have the whole idea is that there's a more greater understanding to this idea of patience. He's like, don't you think I understand this? He's like, look, I'm with you, but we need to take precautions of how we do this, and we need to really be sure. But then he asks her to leave the stuff there because Calvary has had its issues with it, especially after what happened with Carlton and also what recently happened with Kevin. They definitely have issues with homophobia that needs to be addressed. And Grace is adamant that we need to do this, that, we can no longer turn an eye to this. People are losing their lives, and people are, running away from the church due to the fact that a lot of men and women who are homosexuals are made to feel that God doesn't love them. So I thought that was a very powerful scene. And, we kind of seen like Grace is really adamant about doing something now, but Bishop Greenleaf is kind of like, he's with her, but he's kind of like taking her back and trying to ride the curve. He's not really trying to get so involved because in some aspect he probably is afraid of the backlash. But then again, even more so now that Daisy Skanks done threw Cavalry under the rug, in that article that he did with Darius. Next, we actually see that Charity and Jabari, are meeting up with each other. He pretty much, says that he said that that song that you've written has been on my mind for 2 weeks. That song is amazing. So therefore, he says, I got a little something for you. He gives her, this digital recorder. So he says that, look, when you get song ideas, you can just record it on here. And immediately, she's starting to clock. It's like, oh, so you're saying you don't want me to come to Nashville no more? He's like, of course I want you to come to Nashville, but I just want to give you the tools to be inspired. I'm like, okay, I am seriously clocking this. He's now trying to create some distance between him and Charity, and Charity's starting to notice it too. And no one knows why he's doing this, because it is kind of weird that she pretty much, put her tongue down your mouth last week, and now you kind of pushing her away. Why is that? What's up, Jabari? Question mark. Okay. So, but then later on, he lets her know that he wants to take her out to dinner, and they actually go to dinner, and even with that, after dinner or whatever, she drives him back to his hotel, and they talk about this guy who gives him his demo, but he says he's going to check the guy out or whatever, and then he just gives Charity a kiss on the cheek and gets out the car. And I'm like, yes, there's definitely some suspicion going on, especially on my end. What's up with Jabari? Yeah. Alright, then we have a scene where Jacinta Butler meets up with Lady Mae. They're talking about the women's conference, and they talk about that Zora and Sophia are going to do a presentation there as well. So she's like really excited about that. But then Lady Mae starts asking about Rochelle Cross. How do you know her? She's like, well, she's been my financier for years. She's been through a lot. I mean, especially what happened, at that church, Greater Redeemer. That situation was really bad. And she's like, situation? What situation are you talking about, Jacinta? I'm like, I love Lady Mae, because Lady Mae always has that inspective eye. Like, when something ain't right, she gonna dig and find out how she gonna get it together. And she was so on the case, and then she said that, well, it was just, and then like Jacinta goes on to say that, yeah, it was messed up what happened to her at Greater Redeemer. It was a terrible situation, and it's sad that women are to blame all the time in situations like that, and like the man is always, the man always goes unscathed, like he doesn't have any self-control. So Lady May's like, but she's like, but Rochelle doesn't know that I know the truth, but just keep this between me and you. And she's like, oh yes, of course. And then, Lady May gave that look like, I got your number now, honey. Yeah, you ain't all innocent as you've been trying to portray. So that was interesting. Then this scene had me laughing like crazy. And this the scene between Zoe and Isaiah. He is up in her room yet again on the twin-size mattress, helping her with her biology homework, but then also trying to do physical experiments of biology by, getting between her legs again. And she's like, he's like, come on, let's take a break. She's like, we already took a break. But okay, we'll take one, 10 minutes. 2 minutes. I'm like, oh, dang, 2 minutes? Not even 5? Guess you ain't all that great, Isaiah. But they starting to get it in, and all of a sudden they hear like a thud. And then he's like, oh my God. And she's like, oh, let me go check to see what's going on. All of a sudden she opens her door, Jacob's right there. He's like, oh, do you know, they got cookies for $2.99? She's like, okay. And then immediately that father intuition came out, and next thing you know, he pushed that door open, saw Isaiah up in there, and he's like, hi, Pastor Greenleaf. I'm like, oh, so you turned into a little boy now. Now you got a real man in front of your face. You've been talking got all this swag and got all this, all this alpha male going on. But then when you get a real man in the picture, he literally turned into a little boy. And he's like, come holler at me. He's like, and she's like, oh, well, he was just over here helping me with my biology homework. That ain't all he was doing. And Jacob was hot. And he pretty much lets him know, you want a cookie? And he's like, oh, no. He's like, now you're not supposed to be in Zora's room with the door shut, right? He's like, yeah, because it's kind of funny that you would be in that type of situation where you would think it's okay to shut a door in a house that you pay no rent in, and that it's okay to come into my house with my daughter, unbeknownst to me and her mother, and then on top of it, to be in her room with her door shut. See, that right there alarms me, because obviously you think it's okay that you just up in here doing whatever, because the way you're going about it, you'll never step your foot in this house again. So next time you want to be up in this house, leave the door open. And I was like, okay, Jacob, what? And then all of a sudden you see Isaiah, and then he looks at Zora, and then he walks off, and she's like, and all of a sudden he lets her know, now you know better. And she's like, but they are what? What? And she didn't say nothing. I'm like, see, that's what she needs. That's exactly what she needs, because she's too grown, she's fast, and she thinks that she know everything. Like, he got her completely together in that moment. Also, we actually have a scene where, I already talked about that. So then we get a scene with Rochelle and Bishop. She pretty much lets them know that he talks to her about what happened with Daisy Skanks. The same thing he did with, talking about it with Lady May. He's now talking about it with Rochelle, because him and Rochelle are getting closer. And she says, well, based off of that, this just reinforces my decision. I'm going to join Cavalry. And she's like, and he is just too happy, smiling from ear to ear. I'm like, all right, Bishop. Then we see a scene with Charity and Gigi. Gigi lets Charity lets Gigi know that she has a date with Jabari. She's so happy. She's just like so grinning, and she's just, oh yes, I'm going out with Jabari. And she says that she says that when is your date? And Grace said, her date with because Grace is going out with Darius. She's like, oh, so when's your date tonight? She's like, oh, like around 6:30 p.m. Why? She's like, well, the thing is, I need somebody to watch Nathan for me, but I don't want to inconvenience you. But Grace is like, look, I want to watch him. I have no problem doing that. Me and Darius can work something out. But yeah, go out and have fun with Jabari. Enjoy yourself. And we come to find out pretty much that they didn't go out as she had planned. So then we actually get the scene where Bishop and Lady May go over Jacob and Carissa's house. They pretty much the Bishop's talking about how he had like 2 different jobs when he first started being a minister. When he first started preaching, that he had 2 different jobs, but still was doing the preaching, and that it actually even strengthened his ministry due to the fact that he was working. And then but we pretty much know the reason why, Bishop and Lady May are there. They're there to probe about Basie, and they start asking these questions about Basie, like what happened at Triumph that Basie that Basie is coming for the church the way he is. Like, what is it about him that because why is it that the other night at dinner when Carissa was talking about it, you kind of shut her down. What happened? And he's like, look, I have told that I will keep the secret and I won't discuss it. I do respect him, and I do respect the Lord, so I'm not going to put his business out there like that. So their plan at this moment didn't work. But then while they're about to leave or whatever, Carissa starts asking about, getting someone to actually check the broker on the house, and Jacob was like, no, and I'm like, yo, this is definitely going down. But so eventually they leave, and he goes in on Carissa, and I was so here for it, because Carissa has been having this bossy attitude. Like, she just thinks she can just talk at him, and he just got to the point like, why would you ask them about getting the broker fixed after I told you not to say anything? It's like, you're not letting me handle this. She's like, well, if you're going to handle it, then you need to get a job. You need to do something. Like, you up here doing all this stuff, and, you won't even touch the money inside the GoFundMe account. You won't do anything. And it's like, you need to get a job. You need to do something. My main focus right now ain't about your pride or about how you feel about yourself. It's about keeping lights in this house with children that we are raising. So you need to get with the program, and you need to get a job. And Jacob was like, you know what? I know back, when I was cheating on you, and you started to have this type of attitude where you felt that you could boss up at me, I understood it then. But now, you're out of line and you out of order. I have become the moral dependent man that you want me to be. So what you need to do is stop overstepping your bounds and trust that the Lord is going to make a way. So you need to be steadfast. You need to be patient and wait. And by the way, you might want to spend some time with your daughter, because your daughter needs you right now. I was like, Jacob. She looked spent. And I'm like, thank God. But shout out to Kim Hawthorne, though, because she's a great actress. I love her, and she's such a beautiful woman. But the role of Carissa gets on my nerves. So I was so happy that Jacob got her together. Then we actually see that Grace has her little dine-in, little date with Darius at the house, we can already see that Darius is really not feeling it or whatever. And she begins to ask him about that article. She says, so, did you interview Carlton about this? And he said, yeah, I did. And she's like, oh, okay. And he's like, I thought we said that we weren't going to do this. We was going to keep my career and what we have separate. Why all of a sudden now you kind of backtracking on that? She's like, but I just wanted to know, if you were going to interview Carlton, why didn't you interview my father? But he was mentioned in the article. Why didn't you interview him? And he's like, look, I said I wasn't going to do this, and you promised we weren't going to do this. It's like you say one thing, but then you pull him back. And she says, well, you're pulling back also. Let's see here. Old girl wanted to give you a job in New York. At 1 minute you was going to go, and then you decided not to. And then you don't like even going to church, but yet you're dating me, and I'm a pastor. Then he just like, you know what, I can't do this. I'm going to go. But then we see later on, he opens up to Grace, because he comes back later on that night, and they sit down and they talk, and within that, he pretty much opens up that why he stopped going to church. He said that that he used to be married, and that his wife is dead, and she died in a car accident. They were actually on their way to a matinee service, on Sunday. So at first he was really into church, and like pretty much, he was distraught and was very, very sad off of the death of his wife. He goes to his pastor and asks him, how can you make sense of this? And, the pastor kind of gave him like, the cliche answer, well, God always does what's best, and he said from that answer, that stopped him from going to church. And I'm like, I'm sure the pastor meant well, but when someone's grieving, you have to counsel them. And the answer that he gave them did come off like very rude and very dismissive to his feelings. And Grace immediately, I think, was drawn more into him, and they embraced, and she says that, so she asked him, am I going to see you again? And he said, it's up to you. And she embraces him, so she's still going to hold on to him, so I'm glad about that. Then we see that Zora and Sophia go to the cotillion. Isaiah is blowing up her phone. Sophia mentions it that, they're going to probably make us turn off our phones when we get there. So maybe you should practice it now. So at first he tried to stop it, but then he kept texting, and then Sophia's like, well, go ahead and do it, because when we get there, they're going to shut off the phones. So later on, Zora gets home and calls Isaiah. She's like, hey. He's like, hey. She's like, what's going on? He's like, well, I've been trying to reach you all morning. I've been trying to reach you all night. And he's like, oh, well, babe, I'm sorry. They turned off the phones. They made us turn off our phones at the cotillion and everything, but I miss you. How was rehearsal? She's like, it was all right. You had to be there. And hung up on her. I'm like, oh, so because you get checked by her daddy by by pretty much being out of line and out of order with his daughter in his house, you now mad at her for that. I'm like, see, Isaiah gonna get his, and I can already see it happening. So then we see at the end of the episode that messy Carissa then went to Calvary to talk to the bishop and Lady May, and she tells everything about Bishop Shanks, about him gambling, about him stealing the church's money, that he's in the hole for about $250,000. She spills everything. She says, you cannot tell Jacob that I told you this. He will never forgive me if he finds out. So I'm like, Carissa, you are about to cause a war with your husband. And I'm like, that's her problem. She don't know her place. And again, I keep repeating this from season 1, where Lady May told her, your power is best in stillness. Because when she thinks she knows everything, she always makes the wrong move. Now you done got that information out about Skanks. when he pretty much gave his word to Skanks that he wasn't going to say anything. So now you about to make him an enemy of Jacob. And you know Skanks is messy. He's going to do some more crap. And I'm like, Clarissa gets on my nerves, but I'm so here to find out because Jacob told you all, you now gonna run behind his back to tell his parents about that whole situation with Skanks. That's gonna come back to bite you, girl. But yeah, that's what I have, y'all. If I missed anything, put it down in the comments. But subscribe to my channel. Click that bell so you get notifications every time I drop a video. Like this video, comment on this video, and share this video. And I will be back with the next episode of Greenleaf. And next week looks like it's really going to be good. So I can't wait. So until then, everybody, take care.